Hello, and thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight Black Voices. I'm Brandis Friedman. Here's what we're looking at. A historic life and career in politics. We sit down with former Senator from Illinois, Moseley Braun, on her new memoir. Black librarians only make up 7% of the profession. We talk with two of them about their experiences. And remembering actor and musician Malcolm-Jamal Warner, who died this week. We revisit a 2006 conversation with him. First off tonight, Moseley Braun is making waves in the push for more diverse leaders in politics. Her historic election in 1993 as the country's first black woman senator shuttled her into the national and cultural spotlight. From her stint in the Illinois General Assembly to serving as the ambassador to New Zealand and Samoa, Moseley Braun made a journey through the ranks, but not without some obstacles along the way. She reveals how she broke through barriers in her new memoir, Trailblazer, Perseverance in Life and Politics. Bless you. Joining us now is the book's author herself, Moseley Braun. Ambassador, welcome back to Chicago Tonight Black Voices.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here.
Congrats on the book. Of course, there have been decades of news coverage and books chronicling your historic rise in politics. Why did you want to tell your story this way?
People kept asking me, when are you going to write a book? This is my first, so it just made sense to do it now while I'm still here.
Are there other books in the works for you, do you think?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, unless there are questions with this one.
Unless there's questions with this one, and then you'll write a second one to clear that up. You open up in this book, of course, about your own personal struggles, from finding out and dealing with dyslexia in law school, not a great time, to growing up under an abusive alcoholic father. Why share those struggles now? Well,
it was part of my story, part of my journey, actually. My dad, he wasn't alcoholic, but he was troubled. And it was a difficult childhood, and I thought it was important to tell the truth about all of that.
Describe that childhood and how that impacted you, how that influenced you.
He would sometimes be very violent and beat me and my brothers and sisters, but primarily me, because I was the oldest, right? And so, you know, I'd survived that, and that's one of the reasons for the subtext of perseverance. You know, you survive being beat up as a child, you know, clearly that leaves an impact on you for the rest of your life. But I came through that, and maybe that was the grounding for all the rest of the, you know, kicking around that I got as a politician.
Yeah, because he was a musician, and you talk about, you know, him playing the piano, and there were certain tones or certain pieces that you would hear him play that would sort of, you know, foretell what you and your siblings knew what was coming.
His family was family of musicians. They came from New Orleans, and he played 7 instruments and spoke 5 languages. So the man was, in one way, he was genius, but on the other hand, he beat his family.
He was troubled.
Yeah.
You say in your book that, you know, those challenges at one point, they took a toll on your self-esteem and your confidence, you know, the dyslexia as well. How do you think you overcame all of that?
Perseverance, and that's the subtext of the book, subtitle of the book. And so you just take one foot in front of the other, and if you just keep doing what you think is right, and it'll come out fine.
From reading the book, it seems to me like that perseverance comes from the people who raised you, the ancestors who came before you.
That's right. My mother was a great influence. She used to say, "Do the best job you can where you're planted," and so that became really a signal for me just to work hard at whatever it was that I was doing, and try to do the best. And that was the best expression of who I was, and it made a difference.
You came of age during the Civil Rights Movement, of course, got involved in some of that activism. What were some of the influences that shaped your involvement in social justice at a young age? You were even there that day at Marquette Park with Dr. King.
Right. You know, back to my dad, right? He was actually, because he was a difficult man, but he had a very keen intellect. And among the things that he did was introduce me to the principles behind the labor union movement when I was coming up. So between support for labor, support for civil rights, and the other lessons that he imparted, there was no other choice for me but to be active.
Many people that you know for your, decades-long work in politics, from the Illinois General Assembly to the Senate, that's how people remember you a lot. But you say in your book that your career in politics was actually accidental. How'd you get into it?
Well, there's two parts, actually. One was the bobolinks in Jackson Park, and I joined a protest because the park district was going to tear down some trees or tear down an area that had been populated by these little rice birds from South Carolina. And somewhere there's a picture of it, I haven't found it, but anyway, Park District, no, bobolinks, yes. So I was protesting, trying to protect the bobolinks, and that was one. But the second thing was that I had actually run for office before, unwittingly. I didn't know I was going to be my future path. But when I was in college, I was secretary of the Action Party, running for the student government leadership. And so I did that. I had no idea at the time that was a clue to where I was going to go with my career.
There'd be more running for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Later on, of course, you end up sort of struggling the balance of raising a family along with your dedication to public service, which is, of course, something that many working parents are familiar with. Do you think that there were often, though, different expectations for women and mothers in particular in public service?
Still are. Absolutely. It's funny, too, because when my son, Matt, who I adore, was little, he was asked, "What does your mother do?" His answer was, "Oh, she goes to meetings and parties."
Meetings and parties, because public service is just that easy.
So, but yeah, no, it was important to do, back to my mother, do the best job you can when you're planted. Being a mother was important to me, and so I wanted to do the best job that I could with it.
How do you think you did that?
By accident. I have no idea. My son is magnificent. He is one. I hope he's watching this. He's in Canada right now.
We'll send him the link if not.
Yeah, no. He's wonderful, and he takes good care of me. And I could not, I just consider myself so blessed to have gotten this wonderful son and wonderful family in spite of myself. I tried, but I'm sure I fell short.
As the first black woman senator, you were often scrutinized for your appearance, for your personality, but you, of course, wanted to be known for the subject of your work, the service that you're there for. How did you navigate that scrutiny on Capitol Hill?
I didn't do very well. I didn't win re-election, but I think so long as I figured out all I could do was my job, and if I focused in on doing that, I'd be fine. And as it turned out, I was. I am. I'm not crazy.
Was that scrutiny, was it ever hurtful?
A lot of times, yes, it was. But I don't dwell on that. That's part of perseverance. You kind of have to take that stuff and put it over there somewhere. And as Marge Simpson said, you just stamp on it until it goes away. So, you just you can't let the naysayers, and you can't let the negative things derail your effort, your path. And I never did. I just kept focusing on where I was going.
It's good to take advice from Marge Simpson.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, as we mentioned, there were some bumps along the way, of course. There was the Medicaid disclosure just before your election to the Senate, questions raised by your visits to Nigeria. There was reporting about high staff turnover when you were in your Senate office. How do you reflect on the mistakes you've made, the lessons you've learned, the criticism you received back then?
Well, I should have done a better job with my press relations, number one. That's kind of fundamental. That's pretty obvious because I did not do a very good job of communicating what I was doing, because I was focused on my job. I was focused on passing legislation. I was focused on being the best senator I could, and I think I succeeded at that. I passed most of the bills that I filed, and I represented my state. That was the whole job, because it's such a diverse, such a huge state with diverse, everything from Chicago to the little towns, Chicago to agriculture. You got everything in this state, and so I had to make sure that everybody got the attention that they deserved, that they needed, and that's what I tried to do.
And of course, you go on to serve as ambassador to New Zealand, Samoa, as we mentioned. And last time we spoke with you, about a year ago, President Joe Biden at the time had just appointed you to the 10-year appointment as chair of the U.S. African Development Foundation. But the Trump administration has been trying to dismantle that agency. What is the impact of that? What impact might that be, or might that have?
Well, except for the fact that the poor staff have been, they don't know what's coming, what's going on, because you never know from day to day what they're going to do with the agency. And it's right now in court. And so, you know, I just kind of sit here. I mean, I'm a lawyer, as you know. So the court will do what it'll do. And I have no control of that, so.
If the agency is dismantled, what might that mean for the work that the agency was doing?
Well, that would be a real tragedy for our country. The fact is, what I've heard is that a lot of the projects that we had started have been, since we vacated the field, they've been taken over by the Chinese and the Russians, but primarily the Chinese. And so the reality is this was an exercise of soft power by our country that served the interests of the American people generally. And if we're not there, then somebody else will be there. And so these other countries are moving to fill the void that we've created by our absence.
I want to talk about today a little bit, because there are 2 black women who are running for U.S. Senate now. Representative.
I supported both of them.
Representative Robin Kelly and, of course, Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Alta Brooks.
Well, yes, she's in Maryland, but here in Illinois, of course, running for the eventually vacated seat of U.S. Senator Dick Durbin. What would it mean to you if either one of them, you know, should end up winning and becoming the 2nd black woman to represent Illinois?
Well, the good news is that it's the old, you're the first, but you don't want to be the last. So it would be wonderful if we could get a woman elected from Illinois, a black woman elected from this state. I'd be delighted, you know. And I think, frankly, I've endorsed already Juliana Stratton, and I think Juliana will do a great job. I think she's wonderful. The other candidate I like a lot, but I didn't support her. I'm supporting Juliana. What
does it say that it will have been 20 plus years? I'm not mathing correctly. 30 plus years since the first woman did it. Since you did it.
You know, it says that sexism is sometimes harder to overcome than racism, even. And I don't know why that's so. It's historical. I mean, I could sit here for hours and hold forth. Yeah, no, we're not doing that. But the fact of the matter is that the idea of electing a woman is harder for some people than the idea of electing a black person or a person of color. And why that's so is historical and social and cultural, et cetera. Okay. But I think it would be a good thing for our state.
All right. Ambassador Carol Moseley Braun, congrats on the book. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Again, the book is called Trailblazer: Perseverance in Life and Politics. And we're back with more right after this.
Chicago Tonight, Black Voices, is made possible in part by the support of these donors.
Less than 7% of librarians are black. A fact highlighted in the upcoming documentary, Are You a Librarian? The Untold Story of Black Librarians. The documentary comes as some books by black authors are being taken off shelves and as federal funding to public libraries is under threat by the Trump administration. Joining us now with more are Rodney Freeman, librarian and former administrator of the Chicago Public Library System, and via Zoom, we have Sophia Sotomayor, an executive board member at the American Library Association. Thanks to you both for joining us. Rodney, I want to start with you, please, because you are producing this documentary on the history and the current state of black librarians in America. What is it about black librarians that you think we ought to know that we don't know?
Everything. You need
everything you thought you knew is wrong.
Exactly, because black librarians have contributed a lot to the library profession, and their stories are just non-existent. You know, there are stories out there, but you have to search and dig for them. So we really wanted to bring this story to the mainstream and let people know how important Black librarians have contributed to inventions, to the way that we use libraries today. So, yeah.
But there's a quite storied historic connection between libraries and the civil rights movement. Tell us about that.
So libraries and Black librarians have been using libraries to make sure that we get out the information, make sure that we vote. They've been using it as a place to congregate. You know, people have been able to get that information from Black librarians because at one point they weren't able to go to white libraries, quote unquote. They weren't able to access information. There were laws that said that they could not read and write. So these libraries are very important. And how we use libraries today, it's amazing that, you know, some of the founding or the community center idea came from Black libraries. So yeah.
Right, of course, yes, there's the history of, you know, Blacks in protest going to a library seeking a library card during Jim Crow segregation. Sophia, the Every Library Institute published a recent report titled Codifying Censorship or Reclaiming Rights, the state-by-state 2025 legislative landscape for libraries. Analyzes 130 bills introduced this year that target libraries, librarians, and the public's right to read. Some of those legislative proposals include withholding funding from public libraries that don't meet demands of censoring or restricting content, creating new definitions related to obscenity and or harmful to minors, and prohibiting drag queen story hours. Sophia, what is the potential impact of these attacks to the library profession?
It's a great impact because it takes away the ability of librarians and the community to engage in the way that they know how or the way that they would like to. So it's a great impact, and the work that we're doing to continue to push back on these challenges is just tremendous. And I'm glad that we're doing that work and we'll continue to do that.
Rodney, your documentary, it features the story of Annie Lou McPheeters. Who is she?
So Annie Lou McPheeters was actually Martin Luther King's librarian for his branch. So basically, you know, she is credited with basically giving him information. So later down the road, he was able to find what Gandhi was talking about and use that. So yeah.
What did she say about him?
So, I in her oral history, which is actually located at the Auburn Research Library in Atlanta, you know, she credited him being a smart young man and being able to just, at that young age, be able to discern information. So,
Sophia, what does it mean to you to follow in the legacy of Annie Lou McPheeters?
It's a great opportunity. And like Rodney shared, there's so many of those stories that even as a librarian, I didn't know about, that I had to do my research on to learn more of what they did and how they were such an impact. So it helps to uplift me and give me everything that I need to continue to do the work that I do to make sure that I'm having an impact in my community as well as a librarian.
Sophia, what are some of the misconceptions about the library profession? You're not just checking books in and out all day.
Yeah, that's the biggest misconception. I mean, we are leaders, we are educators, we're entrepreneurs, we're archivists. We are doing so much in the field to impact our community in so many ways. We're in the medical profession, we're in the legal profession. Libraries are definitely a way, and our library profession is definitely a way to engage in so many spaces that we're still exploring and have an opportunity to explore.
Sophia, what would you say are some of the challenges maybe that you've experienced or that others experience when entering the profession and being mistaken?
I think the biggest challenge is being accepted and being supported. Because there's such a few number of us, the spaces that we have the opportunity to be in doesn't always welcome us We have to assimilate and find ways to get the support that we need. So that's the biggest challenge that I found, even from my own personal experiences, if there's no one there to support you and guide you and mentor you through the process. And so that's why it's so important for us to have our own spaces as librarians of color to get together and support one another, because that's one of the biggest challenges, not having anyone there to support you and guide you when you get into the field.
Rodney, how might you inspire young Black people to get interested in the library and information sciences?
Oh man, reading what is like the history of Black librarians and what they've contributed, how they've been opening access and opening the doors for everyone. You know, we talked about Martin Luther King, but there's so many people that they've opened the door. There are a lot of Black librarians who, you know, of Stacey Abrams, you have Tanaji Coates that have their parents are librarians, Black librarians. So I just want people to be able to know that this is a great career profession and be able to help people to access information.
Yeah, look at those two people now and all the books that they've written, Stacey Abrams and Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Yes.
That's where we'll have to leave it. Rodney Freeman and Sophia Sotomayor, thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, remembering the late actor Malcolm-Jamal Warner. Actor and musician Malcolm-Jamal Warner died this week in an accidental drowning in Costa Rica. Warner became everyone's brother, playing the teenage son Theo Huxtable in the long-running television hit The Cosby Show. He later appeared on other programs including Malcolm and Eddie, Read Between the Lines, American Crime Story, and The Resident. Warner was also an accomplished poet and Grammy Award-winning musician. The part-time Chicagoan sat down with Phil Ponce back in 2006. Here's part of that conversation.
What goes through your mind when you see those clips? I mean, do you think, oh, enough already? I've seen them a zillion times.
No, it's amazing because it seems almost like a lifetime ago, you know? Especially, and that show in particular was our very first episode. That was the pilot. And I remember it wasn't even a pilot yet, it was a presentation. And we weren't even sure if the show was gonna even go to series. We were hoping we'd at least get a 6-episode order. So it's amazing to look back and just see, you know, how much history that show made, and it's remembering how we were even unsure if it was even going to go.
But you say it seems like a lifetime ago. Does it seem like it's somebody else doing it and not you?
No, I definitely see the younger me, but it's good to see. I mean, back then I came from theater. I didn't really know a whole lot about, especially sitcom. I had done some television, but never done a sitcom before. So I look at, you know, not necessarily knowing 100% what I was doing, but seeing a kid out there who was, you know, kind of winging it, but, you know, but still professional.
Did you always make a distinction between you and the character, even then?
Yeah, I've never had a problem keeping Malcolm and Theo separate. Other people may have that issue, but I've never had that problem.
But you said you got over that problem. I read an interview you did with Tavis Smiley. You said that at some point you got beyond people, you know, rolling down their windows and saying, "Hey, Theo, how did you get over that?"
Well, because you understand that you know, I mean, the show was incredibly popular. The show was still popular in reruns. So, you know, at some point during the show and during the height of the show, my focus was always life after Cosby. So I never wanted to get locked into just being Theo, and I never wanted people to get locked into my just being Theo. So because my focus was always my post-Cosby life, I always wanted to kind of bring people along with me so they understood that there was going to be a lot more from me than just the Cosby Show.
Your connections with Chicago, I understand you came here just about every summer. Why were you coming back?
Yeah, I spent a lot of my life here. My dad is here in Chicago, born and raised in Chicago. And my parents separated when I was about 3. So we moved back to California, but I spent all of my summers here. I spent just a lot of my childhood here in Chicago.
And I understand, Summers, you did one thing in particular that sticks with you, and that is Little League Baseball. What was that?
There are a couple of things, but two of my biggest memories is, you know, my dad coached the Little League baseball team, and I used to love watching baseball with my father and my grandfather. Never necessarily liked playing the game. Basketball was my game, but my father was the Little League coach, and it's always horrible when your dad is the coach. It's worse when you absolutely are terrible at baseball.
Were you bad?
Because I didn't like the game, but my dad wanted my brother and I to play, so he was really hard on us. And I was just bad. I was so bad, I played first string once and never played again.
Ooh, and that's when your dad's the coach.
Yeah, when your dad's the coach and you never play first string, you know it's pretty bad.
When you turn on television now and you see other actors, other child actors, do you ever think, you know, boy, if I just had the opportunity, I would tell them? What would you tell them? Any advice?
To understand the concept of longevity, to understand that this business is really based on flavors of the month. And just because you may have a hot TV show right now or a hit song out right now, the focus really should be where you're going to be in 20 years, where you're going to be in 30 years.
Malcolm-Jamal Warner was 54 years old. That's our show for this Wednesday night. Join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 10. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight Black Voices, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that serves the needs of clients in the Chicago area and throughout the nation.